Let's officially get this going. Welcome to the APH Connect Center Living with Low Vision Insider Perspectives webinar. My name is Melanie Pesco, and I am one of the co-leads for the VisionAware website, and I also handle some of our webinars and website stuff. With me is my colleague, Chris Rogers, who is a Jill of all trades when it comes to vision loss. She's been in the field for quite some time. We have three very wonderful panelists who also serve on our peer advisory committee. And Chris is going to be introducing them momentarily. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping here and let you guys know that if you would like to type into the chat box, we would love to have your questions. Just make sure that you change the to field so that it reads all attendees and panelists and not just panelists. Otherwise, nobody else is going to see your comment, and we want everybody to. Also, this session is being recorded, and we are going to post the address where you can go back and see the recording within a few days if you want to share it with someone else. And then we also want to make mention of our website where you can find upcoming webinars from us, as well as a community calendar of events that you can either find things to do in and around the blindness and visual impairment field. As well, you can post your own events that we can help spread the word about. So those are things that are available to you at aphconnectcenter.org. And so we hope that you'll take advantage of that resource. And let's see, I think that is about it, and we can get the show on the road. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the comments. And Pris, would you like to go ahead and introduce our panelists?
I sure will. We have three wonderful panelists today, all of whom, like Melanie said, are VisionAware peer advisors and have been for quite a while. I think we started that program back in 2012, so a couple of them have been on that long. So we're very appreciative of all the work that they've done to help us out at VisionAware. We have Amy Bovaird, who is an author who is visually impaired, of course, and an experienced world traveler. She's gone all over, and she has been a specialist in second language acquisition. And I think she told me the other day she's getting ready to do some online teaching, maybe in Chinese. I'm not real sure. She can tell you all about that. But she's had all kinds of adventures in her overseas experiences. And she's written many, many books, including one called Mobility Matters and several others. So she'll tell you all about that. Amy has RP, and she'll be talking some more about that, or retinitis pigmentosa. We also have Audrey Demmitt with us. Audrey is an RN, and she has done a lot of writing for us on VisionAware related to medical matters. It's been awesome to have that expertise in helping us out. For example, when the COVID thing first got started, Audrey was able to put some information up about COVID and the medical issues, including eye condition stuff and what to be aware of and going to your eye specialist. And she's written a lot on diabetes for us. And she also has worked with the Mississippi State University Older Blind Program to do some training for them with people throughout the country who serve older people with vision loss. She also has retinitis pigmentosa, and she'll be telling her story as well in a few minutes. And lastly, but not leastly, we have Becky Horter, um, who is a Christian blogger and devotions editor for Proverbs 31 Ministries. And she lost her vision due to degenerative myopia, which is similar to macular degeneration. She's worked for a newspaper as a correspondent and also writes for national magazines. And she uses adaptive equipment to make that work for her. So we're very excited to have the three of them here with us today. They have a lot to offer. The other day we had a practice session and it was just wonderful. And I know it's going to be even more wonderful today when we do it live with everybody. And honestly, I can't remember who was going to go first. Was it you, Audrey? Were you the one? No, I see you gulping, so I'm not sure. No, Amy, were you the one?
Well, yeah, Amy, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your story, your background, and sort of what happened? How did you find out about your visual impairment, your diagnosis, and take us through that?
Okay, so I was around 28 years old I had been teaching overseas for a couple of years, 3 years in fact. I was taking a trip before my next job in Ecuador. And I noticed that I had a lot of difficulty seeing in the dark, more than usual. So and then I was offered this wonderful job in Indonesia. So I came home. I had maybe a month or so, maybe 6 weeks at the beginning. And then I figured, oh, I better get some new glasses so that I don't have a problem when I go to Indonesia. And I went to my regular doctor, an ophthalmologist in town, and I was kind of explaining the problem. I said, I feel like I'm night blind. And this alerted him to there was something more wrong with my eyes. So he recommended that I see a specialist. So I went into Erie, to the next city over, and I saw this retinal specialist for about 2 days. But I guess I wasn't really connecting this with anything serious because I was still going through the list of things I had to do to go to Indonesia. And at the end of 2 days, he sat me down, the specialist sat me down with his assistant. His assistant held my hand and he said, I have some news to tell you. And that is that you have a condition that's degenerative and you are going to be losing your vision. We don't know when, we don't know how, because it's different for everybody. But what we do know is that you will eventually go blind. So this was really quite traumatic at the time. I asked him, are you sure you have the right file? I just couldn't believe that it was happening to me. I was just at the beginning of my career and I had this wonderful job on the other side of the world. How could I be losing my sight? And it felt very soap opera-ish with this woman holding my hand. And, he told me that I was legally blind and that I could collect disability. I said, I have a job. I can work. I didn't feel any differently because of this diagnosis. I mean, when I looked, I could still see people. And, so I was kind of shocked. And then I went home. I didn't really go out of my room for a while. Probably a week or maybe borderline 2 weeks. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? This is real. I'm losing my vision. I'm going blind. And then I turned, after I talked to a lot of people and they didn't know what to tell me on my phone, then I turned to the Bible, and the Bible I was reading a story about when God told Abram to go to a land that he would show him, and he would make a father of many nations. So I said, if God can do that, he can do that with me. So that gave me the confidence to go ahead and to teach overseas, to take up with my position. And when I left, I guess I didn't really know how it was going to happen. Was I going to not see my family's faces ever again? Was that the last time? So I was quite fearful in one way and brave in another way. But the job was only for a year. So I said, well, why not just take it? And I did. That first day when I arrived, I remember going up the stairs, and there were about 18 steps. The top step, I fell all the way down. I said, is this today I'm going blind? Is this today? And I think in the beginning, there were a lot of fears like that, because at that time it was 1988. They didn't know much about RP. So I didn't know what to expect, but it was really a good decision. And for me, my vision loss was gradual. So I was able to adapt in lots of different ways. I was able to look at people's clothing, follow them. I was able to take taxis. So for me, it was a really good decision. And I continued overseas for the next 20 years. And I took I lived in 6 different countries. And the thing was, it was almost like I was being stalked by this RP, like it was a stalker, because it didn't affect me like in a overt way. It was more like it was following me, you know, like I had to be careful. I didn't run into something or trip down some stairs. The longer I went on, the more problems that I had, of course, as my vision narrowed. But it wasn't until 2006 that I really faced it, that I really came face to face with it, because from 2006 to 2008, I didn't teach. I came back to the United States. I didn't teach, I was trying to write. So I wasn't able to really get much out that I could support myself. So I had to go back to teaching. When I started to teach again, it was like I was walked off a cliff. I started walking into walls. I started tripping over my students' books. I missed the table. I couldn't hear my students' answers. I was teaching a foreign language. At that time, I was teaching Spanish. And it was like, what did they say? What did they say? You know, so I had all, and I felt on the periphery of the teachers. I couldn't hear. I had what we thought was Usher syndrome, the dual disability, the vision loss, a progressive vision loss, and progressive hearing loss. So I had all these things to contend with. That's when it really hit me. And I had to make some decisions that year. And I decided to go with an orientation and mobility specialist who was completely blind. And he changed my life because he was able to guide me in all kinds of ways. This was a big, well, it took a year, but it was a big aha moment for me. And I feared that using a white cane would take away my independence and people would see me differently, but actually it gave me back my independence. And it was just such an amazing discovery.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Thank you so much, Amy. I want to get back to some of the things you said in later questions. I wonder, Becky, if you could share with us a little bit about sort of your diagnosis in the early days and how that came to be.
Okay, Melanie. I was always nearsighted. My entire family, I have 7 siblings, and all 8 of us are nearsighted from my dad. That is hereditary. But normally when you're nearsighted, at a certain point, it will stabilize. Like when you're in your teens or late teens, when you're done growing, you know, your eyes should stabilize at some point. But mine did not. My prescriptions kept getting, you know, higher and higher, thicker glasses and so forth. So this was an unusual form of nearsightedness. They call it degenerative myopia, which basically means that when you're nearsighted, the images come into focus in front of your eyes, resulting in blurriness. So I kept getting, you know, thicker glasses. And I had gone to college, and 2 months after graduation, I was sitting in Barnes and Noble. I was an English major, of course. I'm at the bookstore, and I just had a vague sense that something was off with my vision. So I closed one eye, and then I closed the other eye. And when I closed my left eye, I could tell that in my right eye, in the center of looking at that page, was a round blurry spot. I couldn't see the text. So of course I went home and called my optometrist, and she took me in right away and dilated my pupils and looked back there with the light and said there was bleeding, and made an appointment for me to go to Pittsburgh the next day. And then it was kind of like Amy said, I ended up crying at the optometrist office, and she ended up giving me a hug, you know, which really meant a lot, because you know, most doctors don't take the time to, I mean, she was like as upset as I was about it. You know, she's like, you know, well, hopefully they can do something for you. But when I got the diagnosis in Pittsburgh, they said it was degenerative condition, myopia. Basically, my eyes are the wrong shape, if you want to put it that way. They're elongated. And so there's really no fix for that. And it causes a lot of changes to your retina. You can be at a high risk of a detached retina or a torn retina, which I have had. And I can tell you some of the signs of that if you want to know. I was having flashing lights in my eyes. at one point, and that's a sign of a detached retina. And the doctor went in and did a laser surgery on me to shore it up. But in those early days, it only affected my one eye initially. Okay, so while I was upset that I had this bleeding and they couldn't stop it at that time, it was like a couple months later that the FDA or whoever it is approved a treatment to stop the bleeding. So consequently, I have a big chunk of scar tissue in that eye from the bleeding, and I have to kind of look around that all the time. But as long as you have one good eye that can still be corrected to 20/20, you can still drive and do and read and do the things you're used to doing. So for 3 years, I was going on the strength of that one eye that was still able to be corrected to 20/20. But always felt like the shoe was going to drop. I was always checking it and testing it and on edge, and sure enough, the day came when I started having trouble in the central vision of that other eye too. My vision loss is central only. I still have my peripheral vision, which is kind of like macular degeneration, because it's the macula of the eye, which is the center of the retina. That's what's affected. So it's a different cause. The shape of my eye is my cause. Age-related is age-related, but the same part of the eye is affected. So when that second eye went, that's when things really changed for me. And I had to quit driving at that point, because I was telling Amy this the other day. I was just on edge about driving. It just was getting harder and harder. It wasn't enjoyable. And my husband said, you can't, if you hurt somebody, if you get into a wreck, you'll feel awful. It's not worth it. So I gave it up reluctantly. And had to give up my proofreading job at the newspaper too, because that was getting challenging. At one point, I took in a lighted magnifier that I had gotten and attached it to the side of the desk, my proofreading desk. And I remember like the other coworkers coming by and saying, "Becky, you can't be that blind." And yes, I was. They just couldn't believe it. And eventually, I couldn't keep up the pace with the newspaper. So I resigned. And I remember, really low days. Like one day toward the end, I was sitting on the curb of the newspaper office waiting for my husband to pick me up and just feeling like, okay, this is the end of the world. What am I going to do now? I was only in my mid-30s at that point. So I had a lot of adjusting to do, but eventually I found my way. Thank God, but I just wrote an article which shows some of the steps that I took and kind of how I found my way back to accepting this and moving on with life. So
Becky, and I read that article, and your first sentence just really grabbed me about the whole idea that it's so shocking when we learn we're going to go blind. And then it's really shocking to learn that we actually can do that and survive it and create a life, that there's the other half to that. And sometimes people will ask me, how do you do it? How do you even have the guts to be out here moving around in the world by yourself? And I say, you don't know what you have inside of you. You have everything you need to do whatever comes your way. You just have to dig down and find it.
Yeah.
yes, it is so shocking to think that this could become even like normal for you,
Yeah.
and that you could even forget about it for long periods of time because you've adapted so much.
Yeah.
Because at first you can't imagine, well, how am I going to adapt? But little by little, you make your way through, and life goes on. So that in a sense helps, because you're forced to put one foot in front of the other. You can't just sit around, and you find that time passes really slowly when you're depressed and bored. So you end up pushing yourself more and more to try things.
Well, that brings me, all these questions are coming to mind, but I want to give Audrey the opportunity to share, if you would like to, a little bit about your history and sort
Sure.
of the early days.
Sure. So we're all a little bit similar in that I think we all lost our vision or got our first diagnoses in our 20s and maybe after our career choice, our education. I was 25 when I first noticed there was something wrong with my vision. And it took another 6 years before they settled on my diagnosis. And like Amy, mine was RP, but it's a very atypical type of RP, and it wasn't following all the classic paths that the doctors expected it to. So they were reluctant to say it was RP. At first, they told me it was optic neuritis. Then they told me it was multiple sclerosis for a few years. So I had lots of different diagnoses. But when I finally moved to Atlanta and saw a specialist here at Emory University, they said, no, this is RP, and we're learning more about RP now. We know there's different kinds, it progresses differently and shows up differently in different people. So I do have a rare type. I've actually had my genetic testing done twice, and they have not identified my gene out of 286 genes. So mine's still an unknower out there. But it is now a little more typical in the late stages. I am an advanced stage RP. I have very little vision left. I think I have maybe 5 degrees of central vision, and it's blurry because I have high myopia also, like Becky. So it's very blurry vision what I do have. I use a guide dog now, but if you would have told me when I was 25, fresh out of nursing school, that I was going to be using a guide dog in my 60s, I don't think I would have believed it. But I'm very happy about it. I mean, it's evolved to this and some very doable, modifiable ways to live. And I can look back now 30 years and say, you know, the right things came to me at the right time. I could probably ignored my RP other than going for my maybe every 2-year checkups to the retinal specialist for maybe a good 10 years before I actually needed special tools or any kind of identifiers like a cane or special equipment at work. So I was able to continue working as a nurse and essentially fake my way. And I don't recommend that. And I don't think it's really necessary anymore because job accommodation, attitudes, and things like that have changed quite a lot. But back then, if you would say you were a visually impaired nurse working in the NICU with premature babies, they would have ushered me out very quickly. I can assure you, they would have found a way to do it. Instead, what I did was I adapted my jobs to my vision level. And so it seemed like it changed every 5 years or so. And we were making moves anyway for my husband's education and career. So it always gave me the opportunity to reassess my next job and figure out, was this a job I can do? Is it an environment I can do? Is it a pace that I can keep up with? And in a lot of ways, you know, I did not have the nursing career that I first set out to have. I wanted to be this high-powered nurse and get into, you know, a master's and maybe a nurse practitioner and all these other things. Well, life happened. I also got married and had 3 kids in the meantime. And like Amy, you know, if you don't just forge ahead and go, okay, well, let's just see what happens, you know, I would have missed out on all of that. If I was too afraid maybe to reach out and say, okay, I can be a mom, let's try it, you know. I didn't let those things pass me by. And I just knew that we would figure it out. And my husband was very supportive. My children have been supportive. I was able to, you know, make good use of resources and learn what I needed to learn to get to that next place that I needed. And like Amy, you know, that doesn't happen until you get to a certain level of vision. So at the point of legal blindness, that's when you qualify for services, and then you have to start navigating the rehabilitation system. And my goal was always to work as long as I could. I didn't care what kind of job. I'd be a nurse's aide. You know, I would demote myself to keep a job, you know. So I did that. And a lot of the jobs, I call them my lesser nursing jobs, but they really weren't. They ended up being very meaningful and fulfilling jobs. And my last job was a school nurse in a middle school. And don't you know, those little middle schoolers, they need nurses. And there's a lot going on at school.
Can you share this story you told us the other day, Audrey, about the kids and your glasses?
Oh, well, that was the first time that I used assistive technology in the workplace. And that came from Voc Rehab. They sent a work site AT specialist, and he came and he looked all over my office, watched me work for a couple of days with the kids, tried to figure out all the tools that I would need to make this move more smoothly, my paperwork and all of that, assessing their rashes and things like that. I had a CCTV camera, old-timey video camera. I had these big Google goggles. I called them my Google goggles because I knew the kids would make fun of them anyway. They looked like Harry Potter glasses times 10. And before Harry Potter was cool. But so I called them Google goggles. So I'd grab the kids, I'd say, here, let me see that splinter with my Google goggles, and I'd put them on and they'd just kind of be like, like these were special glasses, but they didn't make fun and they worked with me and I taught them how to do things for themselves. It was sort of, I used to joke and say it was a self-serve clinic. I'll get you all set up and tell you what you need to do, but you're going to do it.
Oh,
But anyway,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
They were very accepting. They were very accepting of these things all around. I had several monitors on my desk and they'd have a rash and I'd stick the rash under the video camera and get my Google goggles and, I'd figure it out. And it was work. It was hard work, but a lot of adaptation. I saw 75 kids a day, which was a huge pace. And the paperwork for that was even harder. So that was the stuff that Voc Rehab helped me to manage and navigate so that I could stay in that job as long as I did. And I lasted for 12 years. But there came a time when I was not able to respond to emergencies, children having seizures, and I'd have to run out into the sunshine and I'd be totally blind, or trying to get to the football field because somebody cut themselves. And I just finally decided that it wasn't fair to the children, their parents, the school. They deserved a fully functioning, safe nurse.
Yeah.
But a lot of what I did was education, and I loved that part. And there's so much of what we already know when we do lose our vision, as adults. We know a lot. We can do stuff. And I tell people that all the time when they doubt what they can't conceive of what we can do. And I say, I've been doing stuff for a long time. I know how to do things. I have the knowledge and I can adapt.
That's really interesting. You bring up a lot of good points too. And all of you have brought up some really interesting points. The one thing I want to touch on is sort of, when did you each begin to switch from a grieving process of losing your sight to more of a coping than accepting? It sounds like there's like this continuum. When you lose your sight, you start to grieve, and then gradually you get to a more accepting place. And I wonder if you can share with us what that looked like for each of you, whoever wants to go first.
Well, for me, in the beginning, I don't think I really grieved that much because I just went on to the next thing. So it was a little bit of uncertainty of what was going to go that first year. But then I sort of just left, like Audrey said, I just ignored it for the next 20 years. And I adapted where I had to adapt. And I took the taxis, and I was always able to somehow make it work. I could, in my testing, instead of driving, I carpooled. There was always a way. And I could still travel and do the things I wanted. So in the beginning, I think it was fine. And I could always gradually adapt and make jokes. So that's how I got by. But then when I couldn't do it, when I went back to work in 2008, and I was sort of at a loss at that year. That was a transition year. And I did contact the Bureau of Blindness and Visual Services. That was so strange that I got the mobility specialist that couldn't see it all. I think his attitude modeled to me, and his kind of bluntness, modeled that I needed to face up to this, and that if I did, then I would be fine. And the counselor talked to me, and by the end of the year, I remember going into the classroom and saying, I'm going to tell my students about this. I'm going to tell them why I'm tripling over their books, and they have to put their books underneath the desks. And I would have my cane, and right before class, I folded it up, put it in the filing cabinet, and just began to teach. I wasn't able to do that. I thought that I would lose the control of the classroom. So I just kept faking it and just trying to feel competent in some way. And it wasn't until the end of that year, after it was probably 5 or 6 orientation mobility trainings, spending time with my instructor, and that I could actually feel the confidence that I was changing, and that I could talk to my students. And I did it. My principal said, one person at a time. She said, think small. And that's how I did it. By the end of the year, I was talking to the high school, we had a session, and I was telling them about all of my tools that I had, and I was asked up for questions, and it was really, really strong. It was good, educational. My students were much more accepting than I ever thought they would be. And I went on to teach for another 2 or 3 years. Then I had a class of students that were very did a lot of practical jokes, and I don't know, it was getting harder to manage in a classroom. So I decided to stop teaching. But what exciting thing, I reinvented myself, and I became this author and speaker, and so I could still teach, just not in the classroom. So I started teaching and writing and teaching through my books. And that was so much more, at the time, I just gradually moved into that new field. And it was, again, as Audrey was saying, it was fulfilling. I could still do the things that I was able to do and pull out my strong points. So I guess that grief was more, it was in bits and spurts and bits. It happened over time, and a lot that year. It was 2008 and 2009. So that was when it really impacted me, and I started having to use adaptive equipment, the CCTV, and all these different things to help me. Before that, I could just keep adapting on my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Becky, what about you? Did you go through some grief in the early days, and what was that coping like, and how did you get to where you are now with acceptance?
Definitely had a grieving process. It was, and it, like Amy said, it just takes a lot of time, and it happens in fits and starts, and you make one step forward and then sometimes 2 back, but a lot of times just trying things and experimenting with the equipment and stuff will give you a little glimmer of hope that you can do something that you used to do. I got some equipment from the state. I remember I had this thing that fit over my head. It was called a Geordie, and it was for seeing things like at a distance, and I tried it out with my daughter's dance class and sports, softball, but I found that I couldn't follow the action. It was okay for stationary things at a distance, but not for movement. So when I tried to follow the action, really didn't work well. But that was like a trial and error thing. I got several pieces of equipment from the state. Some of them worked and some of them didn't, but that's part of the process too, of learning to adapt and accept it. You really have to I leaned on my family a lot. I have a supportive husband, so I have to say I really leaned on my family. And having a daughter at that time, you have to keep going for your kids. I couldn't just feel sorry for myself indefinitely. I had to move along and, kind of, and if you need counseling, this is another thing. If you need counseling or you have a chemical depression, you should seek help for those things. There's no stigma associated with it, because you can have healing in that. Also, journaling was a big part of it, because I'm a writer. I've journaled. I had these big pages where I was writing real big, just trying to process everything. That's always been kind of a therapeutic way I deal with my emotions. And so it definitely played into this loss as well.
But Becky, I think we do a good service if we don't really like tell the full force of, I think, the need for mental health support during this process, because this is a huge, huge loss.
Yeah.
And for all of us, whether it's a sudden vision loss or a progressive, for progressive vision loss, you're adapting and readapting many times over throughout your life.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting, because you almost have to start at ground zero again and go through it all again, which is what I found. And when my kids were older and leaving the home, and I wasn't so distracted with taking care of them, and now it was really time to sort of pay attention to what was going on with mom. That was when I really crashed. I crashed about my identity and unfulfilled dreams and unfulfilled goals. And I had a major depression. And in the process of getting rehabilitation and vocational rehab services, there wasn't a lot of anybody addressing the emotional.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to find my own way and piece that together a bit. And one of the things that was really helpful for me at that time was taking the course at Hadley Institute called Self-Esteem and Adjusting with Blindness. And I took it with an instructor who, designed sort of these reflective questions, homework questions and things where you worked through it, personally on what was going on your personal experience of blindness. And it was like counseling. It was really wonderful. And that book still exists. It's out there. It's available on the Talking Book library, although it's not available as a workbook or as an instructor guided course anymore. It still could be very useful for people to understand that we are grieving. You may grieve over and over. You may, like Becky says, take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You have to go back and visit denial again, or anger again, or but
Yeah. Audrey, how does your life look different now than it did when you really started noticing vision changes? You just seem to be in such a different place mentally around your vision loss.
yeah, I really truly am. You have to take the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
People, you don't get your diagnosis and then wait for someone to come to your front door and hold your hand and tell you what the next step is. You have to be proactive. And in the beginning, I went through my denial. I went through my anger, was really ticked at the world about this. This wasn't fair, all that. And I did land in a major depression, for some time, dealt with that. And you got to deal with it. You cannot just put it under the sand or stick your head in the sand. And later in life now, I feel so empowered by the steps that I've taken that I now feel like I can help other people take those steps. And that in itself has healing powers for me. It keeps me, I guess, kind of like on a, it's almost like an AA thing, like you do for not, someone does for you, for someone else, and you keep each other strong. So you mentor others, and I have been mentored all along the way by people like Becky, or Amy mentioned her instructors in the vision field can be very influential people that just kind of set the tone for me and said, look, you have to, this is serious. This is going to change your life, but it doesn't have to ruin your life. You've got to take you've got to learn some things. Don't be afraid of technology. A little bit on the cusp there of a person who doesn't really love technology, but I know I need it. And it's what gives me access to the world and communication with my children. And now, in the early days, I was acting as a blind mom, right? And a lot of funny things would happen and the kids would be so embarrassed of me and I'm just fumbling through. But now I live empowered with the skills that I need. And I'm not fumbling. I don't feel like I'm fumbling anymore. I'm a grandma now and I take care of my grandchildren, and that's a whole new gig that's very fulfilling. But people say to me, how do you do that? How do you take care of 2? I take care of 2 at a time. And it's very, very challenging. And I tell anybody who wonders that my trick is simply staying engaged minute by minute. I am on the floor with them, engaged with them, and I know exactly where they are. And I put bells on them when they're young.
There's a really cute picture. And so Audrey did a recent blog post about her vision. And there's a just a really cute picture of you with all, I think it was four grandkids. Is that right?
Yeah, they're smothering me.
Yeah. Oh, they're precious.
They really
Hey,
What
are.
Melanie, there's a question somebody had about the resource that Audrey mentioned
Sure.
from Hadley. So
Yeah, this is
Audrey
a good
can,
time for you to talk about the resources there, Pris, if
well,
you'd
no,
like.
but Audrey mentioned one from Hadley that she recommended. So if we could have her do that again.
Well,
Yeah.
this was years ago. So Hadley has totally reinvented themselves, just like we all do as it calls for us to do it. So this course is no longer available. And I called and asked, did they have some of the old textbooks? Because I like to recommend it still. The textbook is no longer available through Hadley, but it has been recorded on the Talking Book program through the NLS library.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
So you can read this on your own, read through it, maybe read. I actually have led a support group for 10 years now as well. And right before COVID, we were getting ready to dig in to use this book as sort of a book club or topic for each month's meeting to work through this book together for the folks in my peer group. We didn't get to do that because of COVID, but it's on the burner. It's there. It's available. And while I'm mentioning helpful books, because again, this is it. You have to find these things yourselves and dig in there, get on the internet, get these basic skills like, how to adapt your computer for low vision. And I know many services have been interrupted by the pandemic. It's really hard to put your life on hold right now in many ways. But there's some things you can do for yourself. Just go into that accessibility wizard or that accessibility center and start clicking around and get your fonts bigger and your inverted colors and just experiment.
Yeah.
Most of you, if you're younger than we are, aren't going to be afraid to do that. But the other book I'd like to mention is called When You Can't Believe Your Eyes. And this is a true, concise, greatly written manual for adults encountering vision loss in later life. And it is basically a how-to and has some very useful information. It's also available through the Talking Book Library. The author is Hannah Fairbairn, Fairbairn. She's English, so her Fairbairn is spelled a bit differently. And she's been doing webinars around the United States now since she's written this book for the last few months, doing kind of book tours. And I've listened to her over and over on this book. And I think it's really a foundational book for anyone in a position of new to blindness. But one of the new things that I have kind of a connection I've made for myself in reading this book later, after I've done most of my adjusting, is the importance of valuing ourselves. If we go through the self-adjustment and work ourselves that program to get to the point of acceptance of, okay, now I'm not just Audrey the nurse, I'm Audrey the nurse who's blind. That's a new identity. You have to kind of take that on. A lot of our life as visually impaired people, we need to self-advocate. We have to ask for what we want and what we need. We have to give ourselves over to assistance in public places almost every day. And there's a way to do that. But many of us have a hard time doing it. One of the barriers to self-advocating is not self-valuing yourself. I mean, not coming to that point where you're accepting who you are now and valuing that you have something to offer and something to give. You have every right to be out there in public doing your thing. And excuse me, ma'am, could you please help me for a moment? I need, whatever. But it was a kind of an aha moment for me just in this last month that really begins with valuing yourself, that you really deserve this and you deserve full access to the world.
Well, you talked about books, and I don't want to forget to ask Amy about your book, because I know that you have really worked hard on developing this book, and we've also featured it on the VisionAware website previously. And tell us a little bit about that and that experience.
Oh, that's Mobility Matters, Stepping Out in Faith. It really is about that transition year where I had all these things going on at once, the hearing loss, the vision loss, having to publicly try new things. that challenged me in my faith, that challenged me in my again, self-image. Here, you know, I was this confident teacher, and now I had to adjust all of my thoughts, you know, to what I could do to make myself successful again. So it was one of those starting out points, and you can't fake it anymore, that you have to make the actual changes toward yourself, including other people, and coming up on top. So that's what that book is about. And it's really about how empowering yourself with this mobility, which was my biggest issue, appearing clumsy and this and that, has really changed my outlook. And so that's that first book, Mobility Matters, Stepping Out in Faith. And that is actually on sale. It's free right now. I made it free for people. And yeah, so, and then I did another book very quickly. It was called Cane Confessions, The Lighter Side to Mobility, because we think sometimes it's so heavy. It's really, you know, I thought I didn't want to tell anyone. It just felt heavy, heavy, heavy. But when I started looking back at my life and how I adapted to things, it really wasn't. It was quite humorous how the ways that I responded and adapted to my environment. So this book has 27 stories of my life, and in the mishap kind of world, sometimes confidence, sometimes lacking, but learning something from it. And you know, when I made up stories, like I couldn't find the furniture, so I pretended that I liked to sit on the floor, and you know, when I was in a strange person's house, and all kinds of things that came up. And it's just about being honest with where I was at that time. So that book is on sale. So
where do people find your books, Amy?
They can find it at on Amazon. It's also,
okay.
Yeah, it's Amazon. It's also in large print, regular print. It's in it's Audible, so it's iTunes, and where else? iTunes, Amazon, and audible.com.
Can you say the names of your books one more time for us?
Yeah, it's Mobility Matters, Stepping Out in Faith, and then Cane Confessions, The Lighter Side to Mobility.
Cane Confessions?
Yeah, it's like a...
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are getting real close to the top of the hour. I want to make sure and ask you guys one last question before we get to resources, and then we're going to give time for questions and answers. Either in the chat box, you certainly can type in your questions, or we can also, you can also speak with the presenters directly if you want to do that. We can give you a mic. But for now, there's one more thing I want to ask you guys about. Well, it's actually two questions, but we're going to try to wrap it into one. And so if you each could tell me, so what do you want to leave people with? What is your take-home message? And what do you wish, or what do you know now that you wish you would have known then? So I guess it's kind of one question, but yeah, just sort of, what do you want to leave people with? Becky, do you want to take it first? You've been kind of quiet.
Sure. Well, I want to tell them that there is life on the other side of vision loss, and it will be different. And you will go through some hard times. As Audrey and I were saying, you may, you know, have different periods of hard times. Even when you think you've dealt with something, a new situation will come up, and then you've got to deal with it again, and you may need help with that. But it can be a richer life too, because a lot of the BS just kind of falls away. You get a clarifying experience, if you will, you know, even though your vision is physically more unclear, your spirit and your mind can be more clear, because you see what doesn't matter, what does matter, you know, who's really with you. You can see that God still has a purpose for your life, and it may be different than you initially thought, but it's good and it's fulfilling. Like they said, if we can help somebody else with our experiences, that's rewarding. So, you know, and to employ that humor, like Amy was saying, it just lightens the whole thing when you take that perspective and realize that everybody makes mistakes and we're going to make mistakes, but it's okay. That type of thing. That's, another one of my coping devices is humor. Thank goodness.
So you've been able to laugh at yourself sometimes.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Do you have any memorable examples of things that you've laughed at that you've done or said or what have you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just wrote about that one where I went with my daughter to the restaurant, and I thought I was taking out, it was an Italian restaurant. I thought I was grabbing some hand wipes on the way out. It was small foil packages, but when I got to the car, she about flipped out on me and said, "Don't open that because it's Parmesan cheese."
Oh, that's great.
Plenty of those things,
Oh yeah, we could write books about that. In fact, there's some old posts on VisionAware about our blunders, our funny life stories, and
there's to resurrect that.
Because certainly humor can be therapeutic. And I would add, just as these gals have done in such beautiful, graceful ways, that you are going to find your way. You are. And it's a process. Doesn't happen overnight. You got to get a few things, in place. You need to get your cool tools in place, I like to call them. What technologies are going to work for you. You need to make some big decisions about how you want to keep yourself safe in terms of mobility, either cane or guide dog when the time comes. What kind of services you're going to need from the state. If you want to still work, making some employment decisions, education decisions. But in the end, it is still your life. You are in control of it, and you can move forward and have a fulfilling life. And I probably spent 10 years at least, not doing anything at all. And then really kicking in gear when I needed to. And, that was after having a bad fall, which meant now you wake up, you are blind enough now that you're not safe to walk outside, So these things are the things that wake you up. I call them kind of touch points where they just crop up organically, and then it's time to turn to your resources again. And I do also want to mention how important how important role peer groups, peer support groups played in my early days, because I always would go to these meetings and be with these professional people who are blind, working jobs, raising kids, having, outside interests, and, well-rounded people and incredibly resourceful people. I mean, blind people are some of the most intelligent people I know, honestly. And they're great to be around. But I always came away feeling like, gosh, if they can do it, I can do it. I just got to figure it out for me. And so attending a support group, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah.
And it's an important emotional health piece.
Okay. Amy, what about you?
Yeah.
Do you have any last words that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I agree with both of them about the support group and tapping into our resilience. That is so important. Just in keeping a positive attitude when things happen, even if we fly off the handle at that time, grounding ourselves again and realizing that this is our life and we are the master of our lives. We can control how we respond to our situations. And that is what I have found has kept me strong, and tapping into that humor, tapping into self-acceptance, tapping into the support system, my friends. I'm always surrounded with such amazing people, and I also want to say joining VisionAware has been so positive. There is always a way, so we just need to tap into our whatever we need at that time. But underneath everything is resilience. We are strong. We are as strong as we can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we near 3:00, I want to make sure and give time for all of our questions and answers, because I believe that we've had some come up in the chat, and as well, we're going to open it up for people who want to raise their hand to be acknowledged. But before we do that, Pris has a list of resources that we've put together to share with everyone, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to talk about those resources, but then also to let you all know that we do have a link where you can go and download a document that has all of the resources, and Catherine can pop that in the chat for us. She may have already done that actually, but you can download that document with links that are very useful. And so, yeah, if you want to talk about that, press, and then we'll get to questions.
Okay, I think you sent this list out too as well, right?
It should
Melanie?
have gone in the reminder emails as well. Yes.
Okay. We have a lot of things on VisionAware related to low vision. So the things I'm going to mention are certainly not all of the things that we have. But one of the things that we have is called the Getting Started Guide. And it has all kinds of basic information about living with vision loss, how to get started, support systems, guidance, even things on environmental changes that one can make to make your home easier to get around and safer. So I recommend we have it in a PDF format online, accessible PDF, but you can also order the booklet too by calling our Connect Center, which I'll give you the number in a little while for that. But it's a really great book, and it's been around for a while, and we keep updating it. Another thing, a group of articles that we have on VisionAware are articles about low vision optical and non-optical devices that can help you live with low vision. Some of them were mentioned today by some of the folks who were talking about their electronic magnifying devices and so forth. So um, if you will put low vision in the search button, I mean, we have links to those in what we've sent out, but also if you just put low vision in search, a lot of these things will come up and you can find out about them. But we do recommend that you will want to see a low vision specialist. And we have an article on different types of eye care professionals, including low vision professionals. And these are doctors who have specialized in working with patients who have low vision and helping them to find the right device. So you're not just going, to a drugstore and saying, okay, I need a magnifier. You're not going online trying to find something that may or may not work for you. And also you may need a different device for different types of activities, for reading one thing, for distance others. So you need to really talk to a professional about that. And we recommend that you do see a low vision professional. We also have a good bit of information on lighting and glare. And for people with low vision, it's really important to understand lighting and how it can be your friend, but how to use it appropriately. So it would be very helpful to look through that information on lighting and glare. And we have a lot of blogs about living with low vision. I think we mentioned that a minute ago. I think Audrey brought up some of the ones, but there are a lot of the peers that we mentioned do have low vision, and they've written about how they've adapted and what they've done. And I put in the chat the one that Becky did just recently. So it's there, but you can also get to it through the link that we sent out in this resource directory that we're talking about. We had also some other resources that are not on VisionAware, but things that you need to know about. When I was introducing Audrey, I talked about Mississippi State University, and they have a special website for people who work in the field of serving older people with vision loss. And they have a group of lessons on there, lessons for learning, including low vision. And so that particular lesson might be of real help to you. And also Hadley, Audrey mentioned Hadley a little while ago. They have a low vision series and a series of videos and things that could be helpful to you. As far as what we do at APH, we are very lucky to have what we call the Connect Center. And we have an 800 number that people can call to find information. I'll give it to you, but it's also in that listing that we sent out. It's 800-232-5463. Again, that's 800-232-5463. And we have people on the other end of that phone line who know about the resources throughout the country. I mean, they really know a lot about it, and they can get you connected if you're having problems finding services. I really recommend that you call them if you need any help. We also have a directory of services on VisionAware, and that can be found through the Connect Center as well. And also, you can email the Connect Center at aph.org. But I think it's really helpful when you're going through the throes of not being able to figure out what to do to have a voice on the other end of the line. And Melanie used to do that, so she knows all about it. But so I think it's a really important thing to know about. Also in the resources, we have links to the American Council of the Blind and the National Federation of the Blind, both of which are consumer organizations, and they have meetings. They have affiliates throughout the country in each state. They have different groups like low vision groups and so on and so forth that can help you as well. So there's a lot of information, probably more than you can remember, but certainly a lot to get you started. And I highly recommend that you go through this list and check it out and find out what will work for you.
Yeah, thank you, Pris.
Sure.
And we're going to also now go to questions and answers, because I know I've seen a couple pop up in the chat. So hopefully we can get all of those answered. And if there are any guests with us who would like to ask your question verbally, you can raise your hand and we'll be happy to give you the mic for a moment to ask your questions. Pris or Catherine, have either of you found any questions in the chat that you can bring up while we're looking for hands?
Yeah, let me, one of the first ones that's here, it says, it's often rewarding to be an advocate for others, but will you address the fatigue that occasionally comes from self-advocacy? There are some aspects of remote communication that are highly vision oriented, such as Zoom meetings with chats, icons, symbols, and video trainings that are not designed for vision loss in mind. It seems uncomfortable and whiny to repeatedly request accommodations such as please read chats. So that's a question. Does anybody want to address that?
Well, I'll speak to that a bit. Yeah, so I remember early on when I was losing my vision and I saying to my mother, you know, I'm trying to get used to this myself, and I've got this big job of putting other people at ease and helping them get used to my vision loss. And how fair is that? I don't have energy for all of that. But later you do sort of get better at that. And you also learn to set boundaries and not take on every argument. When I first became a guide dog user, those self-advocacy moments multiplied by bazillions, because every time I went out in public, I had to protect myself and my guide dog and ask people to step back, don't touch the dog, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it is exhausting. So, you know, one of my suggestions is just know that you can walk away and say no and keep your privacy at any given moment. You don't have to, you know, always be a walking ambassador. And pace yourself, choose your battles, that sort of thing. Kind of learn the elevator version of what you're going to tell people and walk away, and, you know, be firm and polite. And, you know, there's lots of skills and techniques that you learn that make that easier. And then you do it from your leftover reserves, you know, because living with vision loss takes a lot of energy. There's brain fatigue, there's eye fatigue, there's every task you do takes a little bit longer. You know, you have to pace your life and go easy on yourself. So whatever gift of advocacy you can do for others, you know, after you've taken care of what's most important, then great, do it. And then as far as adaptations, you know, I never make excuses. It's like, I need to know this. Or there's other ways, like with the Zoom that I'm learning, doing these recordings and sending for a transcript can also be a way where you can sit back and relax in a Zoom meeting and just go back and look at it later.
Yeah.
And not have to capture it right then in the moment. So these things, you learn them as you go, I guess. But anybody else on that? Because yeah, being an advocate and ambassador all the time, and an educator, you know, we're always educating.
Yeah.
These are exhausting roles.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I do agree that it is exhausting, and you have to pick and choose. You can't educate everyone, and you just have to keep some of these thoughts to yourself. And I remember when I was attending the teachers' meetings, and I was on the periphery of things on that year, and I couldn't capture everything with my hearing, and it was just overwhelming. So what I did, I adapted it, and I talked to my principal afterwards, and I got it that way. But you find the different ways to adapt so that it's not quite so overwhelming, you know. And there's a story in one of my second books about how that is exhausting, and you just have to go with the flow, and just you put the boundaries is that Audrey mentioned is so important, knowing when to advocate and when to let it go, you know.
Yeah, I agree, Amy. And now, Audrey, I would say allow time for extra time. Everything takes more time. So you have to change your expectations kind of in your pace of life. And also don't expect people to understand everything that you're saying, or some people are going to be uncomfortable. Other people are always going to remember this about you. And I really appreciate those people that take into consideration my eye conditions, like my vision loss, without me saying it. I used to get bitter about it. Like if somebody would introduce themselves in the grocery store and say, "Oh, this is Cindy from high school," I'd be like, kind of like, what does she think I don't know? You know, but really it was helpful. You know, I had to come around to that point to realize this is helpful, you know, and then it's like you ease into, this is who I really am.
Right.
So as far as, I remember, Audrey too, my mother being very upset about my vision loss. And I thought, I have to console her and deal with the vision loss. And it was, you know, it's like, please, enough, you know, this is enough. And I remember my husband saying, the days are so big for you now, since my vision loss, tiring, like you're saying, you're compensating all the time mentally and in your eyes and the whole bit, everything, learning this new way of doing things. And so to just give yourself some grace and give those other people grace. They're not all gonna understand it immediately. Some people will, and you can be grateful for those ones.
Right. And not everybody's going to stay in your life, and that's okay, because you're going to make some other really valuable connections in the vision world, you know.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And richer too, you know, it's just different. It's not less, it's different.
Exactly.
We also have a question here on recommendations on support or peer groups that can be accessed virtually. And I know this is something we're going to be working on more through the peers and pulling the list together, but we do have a support group section on the website that has a few of the numbers that you can call and access. Does anybody want to approach this one?
Well, I'll highlight a couple ways you might find a virtual group right now. In the state of Georgia, we have a network of peer leaders, and about 6 of them have turned their groups virtual. And now that they're virtual, anybody from any state can attend. So we have these time zones to deal with. It, you know, it could be a big time zone. You might want to pick what your support group is that you're going to choose. But if you go to the national directory on VisionAware for your state, your agencies are likely have taken at least 1 or 2 of their support groups virtually, and you would find something local. Local is best because then they're referring to, you know, the resources and things that actually apply to you. If you start to visit a group from another state, some things may not apply because every state's a little different. But start local with your agencies that you already know exist. And then the professional organizations, ACB and NFB, have a huge line of support groups right now. I actually tested out a couple of those myself last week and was really happy with what I experienced. Those are actually listed in APH Connect Center, by the way. And you can actually connect, you can ask ACB to give you like the day's events that are available, and they're all virtual. Some of them are actually support groups and some are just fun chat groups. But there's a little something there for everyone. And then another way to find a virtual support group would be to, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I had a third idea on it. Okay, so the APH Connect Center has them. Oh, Facebook has some pretty nice. Yeah, and those are virtual now. And you can really find some great support out there.
Right.
Where else?
Yeah, that's one of my main ones are Facebook. There's RP groups, there are visually impaired groups, support vision loss, blind and visually impaired. And there's also Becky Peterson. She has a retreat that she has twice a year. It's virtual now. Becky, I think that's her name, Becky Peterson. I went to one that was physical in Utah, and I can put that in the chat later. I have to see the link, but she has 2 of them a year, and they go through the whole emotional thing too, and it's just so empowering. And it's, I don't know now that it's virtual how many weeks it is. I think they've stretched it out over some weeks, but she's a therapist and she's also a member of the VisionAware team. And so, I mean, that's a really strong resource, and she's all year round. Yeah. So
that reminded me of my third idea, and that is Covia Well Connected. They have all kinds of virtual activities for the visually impaired and seniors. If you're disabled with a vision impairment at home, you don't have to be a certain age to attend, but they have blindness support groups there and some other really awesome services. So Covia Well Connected for lots of virtual enrichment from home.
Excellent. We do have one hand raised. We'll go ahead and take that one. It's someone with a 517 area code. I'm going to allow you to go ahead and talk in just a second. Chris, if you can look for any additional questions in the chat, and then also if anyone else wants to talk, feel free to raise your hand and I'll be sure to get to you. Who's 517? Can you tell us who you are?
Yes, my name is Roberta McCall.
Hi, Roberta.
I just wanted to verify, what was the name of the textbook that you said is no longer available but is being recorded by NLS?
Audrey, was that you?
Hey, can you call me back? And
She's on a call.
Oh, oh goodness.
We'll
Okay,
find out and try
that one, I believe, if I'm not
She's off
mistaken.
now. She's
Oh,
off now.
okay, good.
Sorry. Yeah. It is called Self-Esteem and Adjusting with Blindness.
Oh, Jean Tuttle's book?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll find that it's a little bit dated, but it does follow Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's grief and loss stages, but it applies it specifically to vision loss.
Excellent.
Wonderful, thank you. The other thing, I just wanted to offer another resource that also, it has a database of support groups, but has some self-help types of things you can get. Is an organization called Ears for Eyes, and that's their website, Ears, EARS.org. So they have some resources as well.
Yeah,
thanks for the program.
I want to caution you on that one because a lot of that has gone dead, kind of out of.
Oh, has it? Okay.
Yeah, so you can go.
Yeah,
it's still up and live, but there's not much there anymore. At one time, it was kept nicely. I think VisionAware's directory is way more up to date than that one. So that's another place to get it.
All right, thanks, Roberta. We have another hand raised. Well, before I get to that one, Chris, were there other questions in the chat? I don't want to miss any.
Yeah, there's another question about what electronic equipment they've found most useful.
Oh, okay.
You know, that changes from your first stages till your later stages, and technology is changing so much that is really hard. You can't really just recommend a piece for a person out of a catalog. And like Chris mentioned, you really should start with seeing your low vision specialist, especially when you have big changes in your vision, because it probably means that it's time for something new. The best way to get these devices are obviously to be a vocational rehab client with an open case, because then the state will help you pay for them. But, you know, as we age out, we don't work anymore, then we become older blind, and some of the funding can happen under a different stream. So still go to your low vision specialists and start there, because you can buy the wrong thing. They're expensive. It might not work for you. Plus, a lot of them need special training, and they're not going to work well for you unless you get trained on them. So I'll tell you what mine is now. My iPhone has everything I need to do. And then I have a setup on my desk here with several monitors, large print, magnification, special lighting is huge in my house. Of course, my mobility device, my cane and my dog. What do you girls, what else do you got? Oh, I have a portable magnifier that I take to restaurants to read menus, but I don't even do that so much anymore because I have it on my phone, and I can get online and look at the menu before I go. So I already know what I want. So there's a lot of workarounds.
I've done the same thing, Audrey, as far as look online before I go and have that ready, so I'm not fumbling around with the menu. I use an iPad with text enlargement, and like you said, I've tried some things that don't, no longer work, like that Geordie, and the lighted magnifier is very handy for stores, looking at prices, etc. The CCTV was something I started out with, but I learned that you couldn't read large chunks of text. Like I tried to read a book one time on that, and that wasn't working for me. So I've actually, and also as my vision has deteriorated a little bit, I've gone more to audiobooks and Audible as far as entertainment, those type, instead of reading.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to push back about that, making the transition from reading with your eyes. They'll say, oh, I want to read with my eyes for as long as I can. Well, you pay a price for that. At the end of the day, you've kind of used up what your eyes have to offer for the day. So if you want to do any reading for enjoyment, that's when audio really works nicely for me. And I love audio because I can crochet and listen to a book at the same time.
And you get a different experience. Like you can hear people's accents. It's a different experience than just hearing it in your own head with reading with your eyes.
It is, yeah.
It's kind of like a movie, Yeah.
It's a lot more efficient. And I'm about efficiency right now.
We have 2 additional people with hands raised, so I want to try and get to them. The first one is Cheryl. I'm going to let you go ahead and talk. I think did I? Yes, you should be unmuted, Cheryl.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for hosting this webinar. I found it very educational. I have fought with vision loss for several years and have had good days and bad days. And my question is this: how many of you ladies actually use Braille? I've reached the point now where I think that's probably going to be my best avenue. And I just started taking some classes. So I'm, a little bit, and of course I'm older. So, there's a little bit of obstacles here and there. And although I do enjoy the audio books and that kind of thing very much, I just don't find the same. I agree with you. It's more like watching a movie than it is kind of absorbing it in your mind, I guess. And I'm hoping that Braille will give me that opportunity. And I used to like to write, so I'd like to start that again.
Yeah. Well, I know Braille. I went into it with like a foreign, because I love foreign languages. So I approached it that way. And I'm still kind of, I guess, at the level 1, but I love it. And I use it as identifiers, like with the, to my spices and those kinds of things. And so I use it for my CDs and, but I do keep up with it because I don't want to, I want to have it as an option. So, yeah.
And Cheryl, I'll add too, this is Melanie. We did a webinar back in January called Dots Are Not to Learn or Not to Learn. And it was all about different people's choices as far as learning Braille as an adult. And that is available in our YouTube playlist. And when you'll get a follow-up email, and the link to that playlist will be in there. So if you want to check that out, you might find it really useful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I always put it off. In the early stages, they would say, oh, you're going to be blind by your time you're in your 40s. Well, I wasn't. And I was raising kids and too busy to learn Braille. And I worked full time, right? So I mean, I was a nurse, and so it just didn't fit into my life when I was young. And then technology has kind of carried me along this far. When I get some time, I think I will enjoy learning it almost recreationally, like Amy says, but it can be useful in terms of labeling, identifying elevators and floors and things in public. where you don't want to go off, you know, being too touchy-feely. But yeah, I mean, I think filing things, there's definitely a place for it later, even if you don't become a, you know, speed reader in Braille. It's a great skill.
Chris, do you
And what-
see any other questions in the chat?
No, but I want to mention we've had a couple really great posts about using Braille as an older adult and so forth that y'all might
Yes.
want to check out. They happened in January, and they go into the really how it can be helpful and how important it could be for you to learn. But I don't see any more of
We have
Okay.
we have one more. Rita, would you like to go ahead and ask your question? You should be able to. Oh, there we go. You should have. It says ask to unmute.
Yeah, Rita's from Georgia. She's one of our girls.
Hi, can you
Oh,
hear
there
me?
you go. Hello. Yes.
Hi, how are you? I'm
Hi.
Rita from Georgia, and first want to say thank you. This is such a wonderful webinar. I have two questions. Me as a visually impaired person and a peer group leader, I'm curious to ask the question, do you all find life after being, vision loss, that it has enhanced your life or just elevated your life to a higher level of you feel much better about yourself, that you feel like you are a new person
Oh, what a good question.
after vision loss?
Yes.
Do you want me to answer her a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely feel like it gave me a focus. Again, I'm using these I terms. It gave me focus and clarity because, first of all, my relationship with God deepened a lot because of vision loss, because I realized he was going to see me through this. It's not really on my own strength. It's I'm walking with God through this. And so that I'm a new person in that sense. Okay. And that's a great thing. It's been a real journey because, I look back and, I could have been on an entirely different path with my writing and so forth, but it's given me the opportunity to help other people and, point them, in a helpful direction, and that's satisfying. So that's my story.
Excellent. We have one more raised hand. We're down to about 5 moments. I'm trying to get to everybody. So it looks like it is Roseanne. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I would. I wondered, could you go through what you have on your iPhone that's the most helpful for vision impairment?
Oh, great question.
Well, we all probably use different types of apps, but let's even just start with the settings in the phone. I have mine on the largest font settings, and I have it on inverted color because I like white letters on a black background for my vision disease. So I start there, and then I have, I use Facebook, I use email, I use, let's see, got to think about it. It's so automatic. I have Bard on my iPhone so that I listen to all my books on Bard. I carry my phone around with me.
You were talking about a magnifier.
Yes, there's all kinds of magnifier, like the one's called Magnificent Magnifier. If you just go to your Google Play or your Apple Store and put in magnifiers.
Well, and I'll add too, I use the actual iOS now has a native magnifier app built into the iPhone that's really good.
What year is your iPhone?
It's new. It's newer. Yeah, I mean it's the latest software version.
Yeah, 11 probably.
So yeah, it works very, very well.
Yeah.
What is it called?
It's just the magnifier app that is in the most current installation, or it's been in several installations of iOS on the iPhone.
That means it's going to already be there loaded for you. It's their own.
Yeah, it's already there. And another trick, honestly, that I used to use before that was I would open up the camera app and
Yes.
zoom way in
Yes, I do that.
and take a photo that way. And then once you take the photo, you can zoom in some more. so that was that's one thing that I do on my phone a lot. And then I found like there are a couple of games. I'm sorry, I don't mean to step in, but like for instance, there's a game Dice World that has really big dice that are really high contrast. It's like white dots on a red die. So it's looking for things like that. I know like Words with Friends has really big tiles.
Yeah.
So if you're low vision, some of these things can be helpful for you. And then there are tons and tons of apps now that are available that you can use voiceover, the speech technology on your iPhone with.
Yeah.
So there are a lot out there.
And
I
Well,
might see
I-
a future blog post.
I
Yeah.
will add that I wrote an entire children's book on my iPhone because I have no computer anymore.
Oh,
Wow.
hats off
So
to you.
I not only wrote
Yes.
it dictating on Siri because I have hand wrist disabilities.
Uh-huh.
So I wrote it on Siri and laid out my photos and content on a simple prints app because that was the only one I knew of, which is not designed for books. And it's got great reviews on Amazon.
Oh,
Excellent.
Awesome. Wow.
You're the
You
book
just have to find that magnifier that Melanie mentioned. You have to go to your accessibility settings and it's right there. You just have to make it
No,
live.
all I did was say magnifier, open
Uh-huh.
magnifier app, and it opened.
And it opened. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Roxanne, share what your children's book is.
It's called Roseanne, Rozanne, travels to Africa to kiss a giraffe.
oh my
Cool.
gosh.
And
Yeah.
How tall are you?
it is a true story. So it's about my 3 wildlife trips.
Excellent.
And I wrote it for children. And I was asked to do it by a school where I was volunteering.
Wonderful. That's another whole thing we didn't touch on is volunteering and how therapeutic
Well,
that can be.
yeah, and maybe we'll do another webinar around some other future topics because I think we could talk all day. Unfortunately, though, it is time for us to say goodbye at this time. I just want to thank you all so very much for being here with us today. And Amy, Audrey, and Becky, I thank you all so very much for sharing your stories with us and just being a part of this. If you have questions, you can certainly feel free to reach out to us here at the Connect Center. You can email us, at connectcenter@aph.org. Or as Chris mentioned earlier, you can call the information and referral line if you want resources or information about anything we talked about or anything else related to blindness. That number is 800-232-5463. And then you can find us on the web at aphconnectcenter.org. And you'll find just about everything you need there we can link to. So that is about to wrap it up. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll be giving the ACV REP code. So thank you all so very much.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for sharing time with us.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. It was fun.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.